Call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Members are present. Approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda? Council? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Shallon,
I'll second.
second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes of the June 15th, 2022 regular meeting. You all received them in your packet. Is there any changes, corrections, or clarification needed within those minutes? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 15th meeting?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Joe, second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. This now brings us to our public open forum. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council? Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council? Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council? Our public open forum is now closed. We have no public hearings. We'll move on to reports and presentations. Police Department. Joel?
Good evening, everybody. I have the report for May. We missed it last month, so we'll go through some of the numbers for May 2022. Right on par with the amount of ICRs with every other month in that mid-750 range. Some of the highlights range from 9 traffic accidents throughout the month, 26 medical calls. Big one that we deal with on a daily basis is 28 behavioral health calls. So we're spending a lot of time on those type of calls. It's almost a daily thing now, sometimes multiple a day. 10 alarms, 11 different welfare checks, 9 suspicious activities, 7 juvenile problems, a handful of road hazards that was stemming from those storms that passed through. We spent a few days working on some of that stuff. 6 different verbal disputes. We assisted other agencies 36 times, ranging from State Patrol, Melrose, Stearns County, and Todd County. 19 citizen contacts. They did the downstairs of the liquor renewals, so 15 of those for the background checks, everything needs to be done with those. Miscellaneous 23 matter of information calls get stemmed from just about anything that turns out to be non-criminal. Handful of traffic citations. We had those storms, we sounded the sirens a couple times in those storms, all those were working properly. So yeah, nothing too crazy for the month of May. More recent activity, if you look around town now, all 3 of those signs are up. The one on St. Clair Lewis was working. We have a solar panel issue. The solar panel basically was never charging. There's 2 batteries in that one on St. Clair Lewis. We just got a lemon solar panel. Ben contacted the company. They're going to send us a new one. So I don't know when that's going to be shipped out. Ben was hoping it's going to be shipped out by the end of the week. We'll see. The one on 71 North, that's a solar panel also. And then we got one that's a little bit more portable that's just going to be running on batteries. And that just got put up today over on the Beltline. So those don't take any photographs or anything, but they do document speeds with date and time. It's like I was just telling a few of you earlier, the speeds are a lot more out of control than I thought they were. Really high speeds, especially on that Sinclair. And then I just I'm still playing with figuring out how to operate that software. But from what I just saw from noon to 5 o'clock on Beltline, there's some speeds that are out of control, and we are going to be writing some tickets because it's out of control. other than that, we're just getting ready for the activities in the next couple of weeks with St. Clair Lewis next week and the fair coming up, so we're getting ready for that. Questions?
Questions?
Those behavior health, can you differentiate juvenile to adult, or does it not, or what would
For the
you?
most part, I'd say that 95% of them are adult. Any issues we have with juvenile, those will be labeled like juvenile problem. So, yeah, most of those, I bet you all those 28 in May were probably all adult.
And you feel that that's significantly up from,
I'd say I wouldn't say it's any different than probably any other month over the last 6 to 12 months. It's becoming more of a thing, I can tell you that much. I can't remember in years past when we've had issues like we've had now. Because some of these issues are coming up to, if we have someone that, for example, maybe be suicidal, and if we bring them up to the hospital and if they are violent, we have spent up to 5 to 6 hours with these people because there's no security at the hospital or anything else. So that really puts a strain on us, especially if we get that call at 4 in the morning and one of the midnight guys is working by themselves. That they could be up at the hospital with that person for a couple hours. And then we've done it too where they've left the hospital and we've had to go find them because the doctor placed a hold. But the big problem, it's not the hospital's fault. There's no beds for these people. Like they're having these crises, and they're trying to find beds all over the Midwest for them. So it's just and we're not the only ones having an issue. It's statewide, countywide. Everybody's having these issues. It's just we're seeing a lot more of it for some reason. So
Okay.
yeah, we just do what we can.
Okay. Any other questions?
Joe, you have a assault 4th degree peace officer?
Yep. I can't remember what that was about, but
No peace officer was injured though, were they?
there was probably some injuries. I mean, it was obviously I can't think of what it was off the top of my head, but enough probable cause to charge someone for that 4th degree assault. So they did cause some sort of injury to the officer. That has to be basically more significant. You can't
Yeah,
get an assault charge for verbally assaulting us. So that was,
right.
there was a fight involved there.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just because I've seen some questions on this, whether it be social media or wherever, with the portable sign or the movable speed sign, what's going to factor into when you move it or where you put it next or those kind of things?
So the Sinclair and the Highway 71, those are pretty permanent. We'll move those. The Sinclair one will probably be there for the long haul. 71 will probably get moved to a couple different spots. The portable one, we're gonna move that around as we see fit and as we get community complaints. So in the past, someone has called and said, hey, there's a bunch of speeders on Walnut Street. We've gotten that one before. Once we start getting some of those complaints, we'll move it and then we'll put it there for a period of time. The nice thing about that sign is then we can get the data off it and say, okay, yep, they're right, there is, a bunch of people doing 40. We can address it from there. When we do have these signs up now, we're gonna do extra patrols around those signs. And if we catch people speeding, once they pass that sign, there's gonna be no warnings. That's gonna be citations because those signs are meant to, hey, just check your speed, slow down. They're pretty visible from a distance. So we're hoping it starts slowing people down. And like I said, the early data we've gotten from it, it's a lot more than what I would have guessed. So we're gonna start cracking down. We give a lot of warnings for speeds, but maybe that's not working like we thought it was. So we're gonna start addressing it with enforcement action.
Are those compatible to install cameras later?
No, those ones aren't. So those ones,
Those aren't,
I think they
okay.
do make them, but I think there's some legal issues with some of those too.
Okay.
So, the ones we got, yeah, they do, everything is collected, so it's nice, it stamps the time and date, and then it holds up to a few weeks. I gotta see how long the memory is, but every couple of weeks, or weekly, depending on the issues, I can pull up right next to my squad car now, and connect it with my squad car computer, and I can it'll be kinda cool, because after a while, I'll be able to keep, traffic pattern, kind of pattern things.
Right.
I got a little tweaking to do with it, just because I don't know all the buttons yet, but I'll figure it out after time.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City engineer report? Keith?
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Hope everyone had a wonderful holiday weekend. Aerosmith project, start from the farthest back and move forward. Aerosmith, I think last time we talked about it, had been some restoration going on out there for some of the erosion that's happened with large storms. If you've been by there, you've noticed it's shaping up quite nicely and grass is growing well. There is one steep slope that for Taco Bell, hopefully they will cover that soon before we get any large rain events and have any issues there, but that's kind of their issue, but hopefully they'll get taken care of. But everything's looking pretty good on that. South Industrial Park, it's going well. We have the grading portion of the project should probably be done hopefully by the end of next week. The pipe portion of the project probably be into the first couple weeks in August before that's complete, and then they'll start into the street work after that. So things are moving along there. There is a pay request number 3 that's in your packet and action items today. 2022 capital improvements, they're working on the services in phase 2 of the project. Have some storm sewer left in there as well. Phase 1 will actually be paving. I think it's scheduled for Tuesday of next week, so coming up pretty soon now. And then kind of the last part, the restoration or the rehabilitation part of the streets up on the north end, that won't start until early September. So it'll be a while yet before they get going in there. So that's about all I have for a report tonight. Anything you have questions for me?
Questions? No?
Okay.
Thank you. EDA report? Vicki?
So the EDA met in regular session today, and the really only had one item on their agenda. We had invited Brady Click from the old course to come up and kind of give a little bit more input on his request for the developer agreement for the TIF district. Now, you're having the public hearing on the TIF district in 2 weeks from tonight, which sets up the framework for that, the parameters that we can work within. And so now they're starting to work on the actual agreement and having some recommendations and a better understanding of what their expectations are and how the cash flow will work. So we don't have any action item on that tonight, but we will have the public hearing on the TIF district in 2 weeks. So.
Okay. Questions, comments? Okay, we'll move on to action items. 7A, Resolution 2022-59, supporting Aerosmith and Silvercrest redevelopment.
So D.W. Jones Development Incorporated, they're in the process of acquiring and renovating the Silvercrest and Aerosmith apartments. Those are on 10th Street South, down by John Weiss Ford. They're requesting a resolution of support from the city, and that they would include in an application they have for some funding for their project. So what their project is include, it will still be the 28 apartments that it currently is. They will be doing there'll be renovation of the parking lot. Otherwise, the outside will look the same. Inside, they will be renovating all the apartments. So they'll probably do it in like 4 at a time. First they'll do any ones that might be vacant, then they'll do 4 apartments at a time. And they actually will pay for like motel for the residents to go to and what they need, because they're talking some pretty significant renovations in each of the apartments. And so it still will be eligible for rental assistance. So it's still staying the same type of use. The only thing that will change, because instead of 2 separate buildings, it's going to be one lot, one complex. And then because of that, rather than having the separate building for seniors, it'll just all be general occupancy. And so the eligibility of who they can serve will broaden a little bit. But everybody that's there right now will continue to stay there just as they currently are, so there will be no changes there. So if they are successful in doing that, and I think they're serving 13 communities right now, similar to us with this D.W. Jones development is. And they were made aware of that this may be for sale, and so they're taking a shot at it. So if they're successful in obtaining the funding that they need for this, we'll see some big changes internally for each of the apartments in that complex. So this is Resolution 22-59, supporting the proposal by D.W. Jones Development for the rehab of the Silvercrest and Aerosmith apartments.
Questions, concerns? Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2022-59?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Shellen, seconded by Joel. That was okay. More discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7B, Resolution 2022-60, granting exception from city code.
So we have Ann and Ron Bergman, they're at 829 Lakeshore Drive. They've requested 2 deviations from the city code that regulates curb cuts and driveways. I have an excerpt off of their application that says, we purchased our property in Sauk Center in 2013. We enjoy using it 12 months of the year. With the recent restriction of overnight parking on the street during winter months, we will have trouble using our property. Our garage will not accommodate our pickup. If we park our pickup type to the garage outside, it still has 3 feet sticking out behind the curb. When we bring our snowmobiles along in the winter, there's no place to park our 28-foot trailer. The easiest and least expensive solution would be to grant permission to park overnight on the street during the restricted period. It is unlikely that it would happen more than a few nights per month. If there's no way around the parking restriction, we would like a variance to change part of our curb to surmountable curb style that is common on the newer section of Lakeshore Drive towards Highway 71. This would allow us to park next to our garage off the street. If this is the direction that you choose to allow, we also want a permit to create a concrete pad next to our garage. So their request is either let them park on the street or give them a surmountable curb. So our city code states that residential uses will be limited to 1 curb cut access per street frontage, except properties with 100 lineal feet of frontage or more may be allowed an additional cut, provided they're at least 66-foot distance from each other. So obviously he has a 66-foot lot, so he's not going to qualify for that. He currently has about a 22-foot wide concrete driveway up in that 66 feet. Adjacent to his driveway is a street light and utility boxes for cable and telephone. So the request is to either park on the street or create a surmountable curb. The city is more of a standard curb standard, but if you look at the curb up there, it's an old squared off curb, and with overlays, there's no gutter anymore. So it's a little bit unique there. Because of that, we need to do 2 actions basically. Are we gonna let them have another access? And if we are, what are the conditions that we might have on there? I gave you a couple options. You could allow a second curb cut and have them remove the other. If you see down the road toward that yellow house on the picture, there's another curb cut. That's like one between half theirs and half the neighbors that goes to an electrical pedestal. It's not really a driveway. So you could have him remove that in exchange for allowing one closer to his house. Or you could just grant the second one and leave the other one alone. Or you could convert the entire frontage to surmountable, and then he could access wherever he wants. The other option, of course, is just deny it. So I think on the style of curb, if you want him to match what's there, it's not going to be our exact standard. I think that he would have to work with us on what that would look like. So I think, that's his request. He wants to either drive over it and do a parking pad, or park on the street, or get a new curb cut.
Comments? Concerns?
So his property line goes pretty much right in the middle of that other curb cut that's
Right,
already
and you can see that
existing.
electrical box behind it?
Mm-hmm.
That's right on the corner. Or the corner of the property. And I do have on page 24 of your packet, I have the blue outline of his lot.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments, concerns? My opinion, is parking on the street's not gonna be, that's not even a thought of letting that happen. Otherwise, we're just opening a can of worms for everybody in the whole city. We already restrict the width of driveways based on lot, and we've denied a lot of them at the planning commission level before. There's a few that are out there that did it without us knowing about it, but we don't
My
like that, so.
My concern, Mayor, is if we do this for one, then we got to do it for everybody. We're going to get flooded with people that want to do this.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I'm concerned about too, is we're setting a precedent, and if he owns half of that curb cut that's down there right now, there's no reason why you can't back the trailer up onto the yard for in the winter months.
Except he'd have to go kind of kitty wampus to miss that electric box that sits right in the middle of that.
Yeah, it's not gonna be ideal, but
And I think we also have restrictions within that ordinance about what type of material those things sit on, the trailers and the RVs and the boats in winter months.
yeah, basically, but in the winter months when he's talking about it, then he's, it's froze. And he's not gonna be,
Not long-term, like he
it's
says
not
a
a
couple.
long-term thing. If it was gonna be a long-term, but I can see that if we give him a curb cut or let him, and we can't give him permission to create the concrete pad, that's permission to do something without even having a permit to do it. That's, that violates everything that,
The concrete pad would be a zoning permit from the planning commission. That wouldn't be something that you would do here. But
Right.
I think he didn't know that when he wrote this,
right.
so.
Was there any reason why the garage would not accommodate their pickup? Is it too tall? Is it too wide, too long,
I think
too
his pickup is too long.
long?
There's just way too many things that we're gonna open up a can of worms on if we grant this, or any of it.
But how many
In my
situations are there where, I mean, he's got the partial second curb cut there already, so that's something that already exists on this street. So to me, moving it down a little bit, I mean, here he is trying to utilize his property and trying to stay within the confines of the rules that, we created when it comes to the winter parking. So
The one thing on that is, if we ever redo that road up there and we put new curb gutter and everything in, that driveway could disappear because it basically goes to nowhere.
So are you suggesting,
which driveway?
Shallon, if they close up that second one and get a new second one?
that's what, I mean, even just shifting it down a little bit, I would be more leaning towards that. I mean, I understand what you're saying about, does it create precedence? Well, maybe. But I mean, I think looking at each individual on its own merit, and this is a problem that he didn't create. He was fine having it on the street. So
Another thing too that I wanted to point out, and we're gonna be putting this out, you had created that winter restriction parking, and we wanna get it out either in the utility bill and on Facebook, et cetera, reminding people of that, because it's still summertime, they still have time to make alternate plans for parking this winter. I have the feeling we'll probably be seeing more driveway requests for people needing additional parking.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things is every time someone has a third stall garage, they want their driveway as wide as their 3-stall garage, which is against city code, and we've denied it over and over.
and I feel to me, I guess
So
I feel
it's
what,
the same situation, in my opinion.
I feel what's different here is the second one already exists. So it's not as though they're asking for something new. They're just wanting to,
The second one is shared, though. It's not all his. So it really, in my opinion, it really doesn't exist.
Well, and I assume that's not used by anybody either. It's just
Yeah.
basically
Right.
where the service was at that time.
And at that time, there might have been other buildings at that time that got tore down, or it might be access to that garage that's farther back.
There's no reason for access to that utility box for that curb cut, correct?
Right.
No,
That garage in the back, that might have been, who knows if they picked it up and moved it back there at some point in time and the curb cut stayed, but obviously nobody's ever using it, so
Yeah.
No.
it's not anything that I would say that we should base our decision on.
Well, the fact that we've created the no parking and, trying to be accommodative to the situations of the people, I think it's worth the discussion here to see. I mean, and he's got, it'd be different if he could get from his driveway to the side. We've got a power pole and use those utilities there, so it's not like he could have just poured a pad to that side. That would made it, accommodative to him just to drive in the normal driveway and get to the side of the garage there for parking on a pad either.
To avoid a curb cut.
How much room is there between the garage and that power pole, or is those
I think it's about
utilities been
17 feet.
It'd be, I mean,
17
you could
feet?
maybe get
Well, you
through
can
there, but
see on
if
the
you're backing
picture
a
with
trailer
his
and stuff
pickup.
in there.
With this pickup, you can kind of see how far the pole is from the garage.
Yeah. I mean, for the corner of the garage, the pole, there's no reason why, you know, if you're pulling a trailer, you better be able to stick it into a 17-foot spot.
Or do you mean just back it in at an angle?
Yeah.
Between the pole, back it onto the yard?
Right. You know, your standard truck is what, 8 feet wide, and you're driving down a 12-foot lane.
Aren't we also discussing underground wiring eventually throughout the city, so this power pole will eventually be gone?
This isn't a power pole, it's a street light.
Just a street light.
Yeah,
So
so we
We
could,
can
in the
move
future,
that.
it could
We
be-
could probably move that if it was a problem, but at the base of the street light is a couple utilities from Arvig and some cable. Well, in the picture there, there are just a bunch of wires sticking out of the
Yeah,
ground.
they're still
I
like
don't know what
that.
happened to the cable boxes.
yeah, the box is
I don't know if
gone.
someone
It's
hit them
just
or if
the
they're moving
wires
them
are
or
sticking out now.
what's going on.
So the only way to do that is if that's just those wires and they're all connected, we just make them stick them underground and we pull the pole and he doesn't have a street light. We've got the options in front of us that Vicky had laid out. I'll be willing to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for number 4, deny request.
Okay, we have a motion by Diane to deny the request. Do we have a second? Chair will second it. More discussion?
I guess I'm not really in favor of just denying it outright. If we can find a way to accommodate his needs, whether it's one of these things or continuing that conversation. Maybe looking into what needs to happen with these utilities. Are they no longer in service? Can they be buried? What's the status of that? Moving that light pole, something to help his needs in the situation that, as Shalon said, is not of his own creation. So whether that's, again, one of these things or maybe a option that's not on here. So that's just my thoughts.
I'm inclined to agree with what Joe said. I mean, I think just denying it kind of leaves him with not very many options. I know what you're saying about it looking large, but even from this aerial shot, I know that kind of takes a different angle. It doesn't look like there's much room to back around that light pole.
I gotta, and I understand both sides of it, and I second it just for more discussion's sake. But we also just went, when we did the initial no parking on Sinclair Lewis from 2 to 7, the full length, we basically, of course, we changed it up here, but the people that were on the far east side of Sinclair Lewis down there was 4 people in that one house that were renting it, and they had nowhere to go, and we weren't too worried about it.
I think-
It's up to the landlord to
Yeah.
supply the parking, so, okay, now we changing it. Now if we say, okay, well, this guy, is different than anybody else is renting property, and their landlords won't supply it, so then what do we do?
I feel the difference is the available space. So there's space to do something here. That house, there was no space to do anything. They didn't even have anything available next to the house to provide off-street parking, where this is an opportunity to explore what he has
That's
available.
the house that we changed on, but if you go down farther, closer to the Holy Family School, farther down, they didn't have room either unless they parked them all on the yard in the wintertime.
If there's
So-
space available to do something with, which he does, and he would meet, I would imagine by his lot size, he would meet the coverage, even if he put in, a 30-foot slab there for his trailer, he still wouldn't, surpass his impervious. So they just didn't have the option there. This, we have an option. He's just asking us to work with him with his options, if there's any available. And I'm agreeable with Shallon and Joe that maybe we explore what else we can do with what this space allows, other than allowing another curb cut.
So you're talking surmountable curb?
Surmountable, no. Well, at least let's see what we can do with that pole that's there and what he can put next to his garage with the curb cuts that are available.
Because I can see the situation, we're gonna have everybody, if we do a surmountable curb, and everybody that we said, no, this is all the width that you get for, even though you have a third stall garage, you got the room to make it in there and do your thing. They're gonna come back and request us to change the curb and give them that wider curb cut, and we're gonna just open the door to everybody wanting to get it done.
What I'm thinking, and that's why I'm thinking maybe just table it and talk to him more on what is feasible. I mean, it's a 28-foot trailer that he's talking about needing space for, as well as his truck. But getting it around the corner of there, I don't see that being too difficult if he just expands his driveway beyond the curb and not creating another cut.
And that's the reason why I asked how much room there was between the corner of the garage and that pole. Because I know of one place in particular that they have to back in their driveway and back their fifth wheel camper around the corner of their garage to park it there next to it, and they don't have an issue doing it. And they don't have to jump a curb to do it. This is basically the same situation. There's a telephone pole in place and everything else there too.
There's a pole there too, that would be a potential.
So that's the reason why I'm thinking we're just opening ourselves up to a whole flood of everybody that's got a 3-stall garage or needs to back a camper in, making it easy. I'd even like that if I would have had it, but,
So
anybody would.
So you're denying it for now, but not without finding out if it's feasible, is what the motion on the table is.
Yes, that's correct.
The motion is to deny it totally. I seconded it. It's for discussion's sake, just to keep discussion going.
We could deny it for now, but, they could always look into other possibilities, but
But
I
then
don't
at
want to
that,
open a can of worms on this.
at that point, I'd rather, instead of just denying it outright, maybe tabling it for, like Heidi had said, more discussion, I think is,
Which I can agree with. For right now, we got a motion and a second on the table, so we gotta take action on that, and then we can have another motion if someone else wants to, depending on which way the vote goes on this.
Right.
And then we can do another one. If it passes as a denial, then it's done. If it's not, if it gets defeated or whatever, then another motion can be entertained. So, any other discussion? Otherwise, I'll call the question. The motion is to deny the request. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion fails. 2 in favor, 3 against. Is there another motion?
I'd like to make a motion to table the discussion to explore the feasibility of the available space without a curb cut before we deny it again.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Heidi, second by Shallon. How soon do you want to bring this back? Can we bring it back at the next meeting, or you want to wait a month? Because I don't know how soon Public Utilities is gonna,
Well, I'll call him, if this passes, I'll call him tomorrow, and I'll also find out on the utilities a little more information.
okay? So whenever we get that information, then we'll bring it back. If that's okay? Okay. If this passes. Okay, any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4 in favor, 1 against. That is now tabled. 7C, Resolution 2022-52, designating handicap parking stall.
At the June 1st meeting, the council considered the request of Main Street Dental at 304 Main Street South to designate a handicap parking spot for their patrons. There's no other handicap designated stalls in the 300 block of Main, which is the block from St. Clair Lewis Avenue to 4th Street. That's the 300 block. There is one in the 200 block, which is by the Pullman House, and there's one adjacent to Jitters on the 400 block. So we have 2 on Main Street. The city, we can't designate a handicap parking stall if it's not accessible due to lack of a pedestrian ramp. The stall directly to the north in front of 300 Main Street South, which is Geierman's, is located adjacent to a ped ramp at the stoplight and could be designated. At the June meeting, the council discussed the potential safety issues as it results to turning traffic at the light and tabled the issue pending input from MnDOT and the police department. And MnDOT has delegated their parking authority to the city, and they only provide design guidance, which I did attach for you. And their design guidance basically says that there has to be a sidewalk next to the parking space that is accessible, which in this case, in that location would be. And then I did talk to the police department about that, and they said that we do not have any other handicap parking on that block. The one thing to consider is that for every time you designate one, you take one stall away from the general parking total, because the stall doesn't get used that often. And so then for other uses, it sits empty. So that's the one thing to consider. You know, you'd be removing one from the regular parking, but that they felt that designating one would be appropriate since there isn't one in that block. And so I have resolution 2022 designating the parking stall and installation of signs.
Questions, concerns? At the last meeting, I think we were talking about the one on the north side of Geierman's,
Right.
and that people cutting through that parking. This one out front,
This was always
I
the
think it was
request. I don't know how
misunderstood.
you got around the Geierman's side.
oh, well, the Geierman side used to be where the handicapped used to be.
Yeah, and I don't,
So that's
I don't know
where-
where that one went, but when I put this in the packet for the meeting that I wasn't at, it was this location.
Okay.
You guys got off track a little there.
I
Yes, we
thought
did.
it was presented as either or. It could be offered as this way or the one behind.
Can be,
That's
she
how
wasn't
my-
at that meeting, so,
That's what my memory serves me, but
right. I guess I'm not against a handicap parking spot. I just was wondering, you know, they still gotta walk back one full parking spot to get to the bed ramp.
Sure would be a lot handier for us handicapped people, I'll tell you. I'm all for it.
Because not everybody's gonna go back and use the handicap.
Yeah.
A lot
Right.
of times what happens is someone pulls up into the handicap stall and the person gets out the
Yeah.
passenger side. you
Yeah,
know, to go.
right.
And so it's not always the
Always the driver,
that's the
right.
situation.
Okay,
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
I'll second.
okay. We have a motion by Diane and a second by Joe to approve the designated parking and installation of signs. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7D, approve pay request number 3, South Industrial Park.
So we have payment risk 3 from Northern Lines contract for the South Sauk Center Industrial Park project. As you know, our total contract is $3.675 million. The request, or the amount earned to date is $979,000, of which we have already paid $652,000. So after we remove the retainage, the amount due this request, $278,258.20. So that is pay request number 3 for Northern Lines Contracting.
Questions, concerns? Do I have a motion to approve pay request number 3?
motion to approve.
Motion by Shallen,
I'll second.
second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. We have no unfinished business. New business, hospital area parking.
the last meeting we had, Linda Goins-Flipnick was at the meeting, and she was very concerned about the parking situation by the hospital. With the growth of the hospital, the construction, the parking lot was under construction. There was just a lot of things happening that was causing her a lot of stress regarding the development of the hospital. I did reach out to Patty up there, and we had some discussions on their parking and what some options might be. And plus, there was the question about the MRI truck, which I don't know for sure whether it ever went on Oak Street, but it shouldn't. And so she has talked to the contractors and asked them to be more mindful of how they park along those residences. And also, she had said that, you know, they would be very open to a single-sided parking. You know, it might be something in the future that you might want to look at along the hospital area. Maybe have only the parking on the hospital side and not on the resident side, because what's happening is they can't back out of their driveways to get turned, to get onto the lane, because they can't see behind the cars that are parking at the ends of their driveways. And of course, a lot of those vehicles right now are trucks because it's construction and contractors. I also talked to Linda a little bit more about that too. So I asked her what she felt her solutions were and how she wanted to mitigate that. And I think some of the things is, although it's frustrating during construction to hear the noise, and she understands that, she said that in the parking lot, the cars face Oak Street. And so they come in early to work in the morning or whatever, and the headlights shine into their houses all along there. And her suggestion is some kind of a hedge or something that the hospital could put between the sidewalk and their parking lot, whether it's a hedge or a fence or something to block those headlights that are shining across the road into the residences. And of course, there is where they access onto Oak Street, you know, that one we wouldn't be able to do, but that does not line up directly with the house when the cars are coming out. So I think that's an option that we can talk with to the hospital. So the hospital will be coming to give you guys an update on the project in the coming weeks. I don't know if it'll be the next meeting or the one after that, and kind of talk about how many phases they have left to do, because they'll be moving people into new parts and moving people out of old parts. And since we had had Linda here, they have opened up half the parking lot, so that has relieved some of the parking tension. But I do know other area residences, there's some frustration with the extra on-street parking as a result of the existence of the hospital. I think that's something we need to maybe address in the coming weeks, as far as where that parking is going to be allowed or what there might be some alternatives. So the hospital's amenable to work with us on it, and I think we should take advantage of that and maybe help some solutions to take the pressure off the residences in that area. So I just kind of wanted to update you that we haven't just forgotten about her.
Right.
Thank you, Vicki.
Sidewalk repair and inspections?
So, you know, that last year we had hired a company to come in and do the inspections and give us estimates and on what the sidewalk repairs would be, and they did the rest of the city this year. It's kind of a significant dollar amount, so I think we want to take that back to either the Finance Committee or Operations Committee to even make a recommendation. Do we want to take that much on? Are there some that could leave out? What is going to be the date that we're no longer going to require replacement on Main Street because of the reconstruct that's going to happen? So kind of some of those policy and finance decisions. And so before we said the go-ahead, or before we randomly removed things, we wanted to run that through the committee and come back and get a recommendation from the city council. So whether you want to take it to, which committee you want to take it to, we'll try to get together next week. We have some other committee issues to do at the same time. So I don't know if you want to do operations or finance or.
Well, I think if operations got it, that's fine, but if it's a large dollar amount, then it's gonna end up at finance, so maybe it should just go straight to finance. I don't know what.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
You know, no need to go to one committee to have a decision and then hand it over to the people
Next
that,
committee.
the next committee,
Yeah.
and it just draws things out, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, anything, questions about either one of those?
No.
Then we will move on to the consent agenda. We have scheduled claims, unpaid claims of $452,875.20, paid claims of $500, for a total of $453,375.20. We have resolution number 2022-61, accepting contribution of $129.25 from the men's card playing group to be allocated to the senior center. And I want to acknowledge that contribution on behalf of the city and the council and thank them for that. We have a temporary extension of premise permit and road closure for a Sinclair Lewis Day street dance on July 16th, 2022. The road closure request is a 2-block area from Main Street to Elm Street from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. and closed 1 block from Main to Oak Street from 6 a.m. to 3 a.m. Erie Kellerman plans to close the road at 6 a.m. for the car show and street dance and reopen at 3 a.m. following cleanup. The fenced area will be from the Palmer House across the Geiermans and at the intersection of Elm Street. The car show, street dance, road closure permit will be sent to Jody Tech at the county after council approval. And we also have a request from Erie Kellerman, Next Door Bar and Lounge, for temporary extension of premise permits for a 13th anniversary party with music on July 30th, 2022 in the back parking lot next door and the food shelf from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. Is there any questions or concerns about the consent calendar? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Heidi, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Informational items?
Just have 2 reminders that you'll be having a public hearing on TIF District 1-16 at the next meeting on July 20th. And we also have the bond sale for the 2022 A bond for the Second Street project also to occur on July 20th. So
Okay.
that's all I have.
Anybody have any questions about those 2 items? Okay. This brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Motion by Shallen, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.